有67%的人想当大官儿。说这个问题问到一个广州市一个小学2年级的小女生的时候，这小女生答得更经典，我长大想当贪官。她也不知道贪官是什么，肯定大人总说贪官好，贪官有钱，对吧？贪官你看，贪官腐化堕落腐败，尤其这个贪官这个堕落到都不是人的地步，他都是动物。人从过去的蒙昧时代进化到现在，是不是到现在行了一夫一妻制，对吧？你看贪官哪个没情妇？这都不是我说的，中纪委都统计说贪官95%有情妇，对吧？没错吧？95%绝大多数啊。那贪官95%是动物。后来我就琢磨，哎呦，还有5%不是动物，还有5%不忠于党，忠于家庭，不爱国家还爱老婆。那这5%政治上不行，生活作风还行，再打听这5%是女贪官，就是男贪官100%都是动物啊。
Since the establishment of the CCP, corruption issues such as embezzlement, bribery, misappropriation of public funds, and unexplained wealth within and outside the CCP have persisted and continue to be rampant. According to a study by the Renmin University in Beijing and the publication of CCDI, over 95% of Chinese government officials convicted of corruption in 2012 had at least one mistress. It is often the case that those who excel in corruption also have colorful extramarital histories. In fact, it has been proven that some leading cadres' descent into corrupt criminal activities began with a lack of moral integrity in their personal lives. Here are the promiscuous behaviors of Chinese officials. Just a small number of cases among the thousands of other corrupt officials, but enough to reveal the true face and unbridled romantic scandal lives of these high-ranking leaders of the people. Brutal type. Unable to bear harassment, Chinese official hired killers murdered the mistress, and her body was brutally cremated afterward. Xi'an, former vice chairman of the Beijing Fengshan District Political Consultative Conference, was having a good time with his extramarital lover, Li Selman. They were affectionate and sweet. When the passion of the extramarital affair faded and they faced conflicts over interest, their contradictions became difficult to hide, and Xu started thinking about getting rid of Li Selman. Xu then confided in his former driver, Liu Selpeng, about the serious trouble of Li Selman that he was currently facing, explaining the situation where he could potentially be entangled to death by her. Xu Qiyun just wanted Li Selman not to bother him anymore. So, on the morning of January 27, 2006, Xu Qiyun sent a text message luring Li Selman to a remote paint factory on the outskirts of the city. Then, when the factory workers were on holiday for the Lunar New Year and there was no one else inside, Liu Selpong used a method of choking Li Selman to death. To cover up the crime, Liu Selming set up a wooden frame in the room, poured paint and diesel on it, and burned the body until midnight, destroying Li Selman's remains and cleaning the crime scene. Fearful Liu Selpeng still couldn't rest easy. The next day, he had someone renovate the room where the crime had occurred, turning the house where the murder had just taken place into a new one. Li Selman was murdered on New Year's Eve. Her mother was waiting for her daughter to come home, her husband was waiting for his wife to have dinner together, and her 5-year-old daughter was waiting for her mother to return gently. After many days and nights of uninterrupted waiting, no one knew where she was. The police got involved in the investigation, and it was only then that they discovered the extramarital affair diary between her and Xu Qiyuan. Everything came to light, and people thought Xu had already destroyed all the evidence, but the woman they had killed had documented everything that had happened between them. At the same time, the police also traced the connection between her and Zhu. It's truly too cruel. A high-ranking official in Xi'an, Chandong detonated his mistress in public, Duan Yihe, former director of the Standing Committee of the People's Congress and party secretary of Jinan City, Shandong Province, maintained a 13-year-long extramarital relationship with Liu Haiping, the chief of the Land Bureau in Jinan. Later, their relationship deteriorated when Liu Haiping's aspiration to become the third party in their relationship was not fulfilled. When his political career was threatened, Duan Yi, he hired his nephew Chen Qi to murder his mistress. Chen Qi subsequently devised a plan to use 2 kilograms of ammonium nitrate explosives to kill Liu Haiping. On July 9, 2007, Chen placed the explosives under the seat of a car driven by Liu Haiping. In the late afternoon of that day, Chen remotely detonated the explosives on the street, destroying 2 cars and killing Liu Haiping on the spot. This was the infamous 7-9 explosion case in Jinan that shocked the whole nation. Later, both Duan Yi, he and Chen Qi were sentenced to death for the crime of intentional homicide. Meticulous type. Zhang Zonghai, the director of the propaganda department of the Chongqing Municipal Committee, differs from some corrupt officials. He prefers women who are college students, beautiful, or virgins. "I would rather eat a bite of peaches than a basket of rotten apricots," is his mantra. It is reported that, in addition to accepting bribes, Zhang Zonghai also had some personal issues. He was a playboy who often engaged with female students, frequented prostitutes, and maintained mistresses. It is said that Chang selected girls based on 3 criteria. First, they must have graduated from college. Second, they must be good-looking. And third, they must be unmarried. Before he was investigated and punished, he had maintained more than 70 mistresses, providing them with housing, vehicles, living expenses, and more. Some of them were female college students or young women who had just graduated. Some were foot bath attendants or masseurs around 18 years old. Shameless type. Dong Feng was the former secretary of the Chanshan District Committee in Shuchu City. He and his lover staged the most scandalous and morally corrupt bedroom affairs that were despised by everyone. In the process of expanding his power, Dong Feng gradually lost his initial beliefs. His private life was also filled with unrestrained and absurd debauchery. Dong had interactions with many women, including one named Qi, who was even a relative of Dong. Disregarding ethics and the dignity of his family, he maintained this ridiculous cohabitation relationship through a polygamous arrangement. What's even more astonishing is that, in order to achieve his divorce goals, Dong Feng resorted to physical and emotional coercion against his own wife, forcing her to watch explicit videos involving himself and Qi, even forced her to stand by and witness firsthand the scene of him and his lover engaging in sexual relations, regardless of whether she agreed or not. He controlled his wife in a cruel manner, a person driven by an insatiable thirst for power and bottomless greed for money and lovers. Over the past decade, he has accepted bribes on more than 40 occasions, totaling over $440,000. Among these, he embezzled together with his lover almost $380,000. Commitment type. During his relationship with his lover, Dong Mei, Zhang Guhua, former director of the Hunan Provincial Special Communications Administration and a vice ministerial level cadre, would call every 1 or 2 hours to let her know his whereabouts. Moreover, because he imposed strict control over him, Zhang was forced to write 3 promissory commitments with various content, such as, "I will never make Dongmei angry again. I will definitely marry Dongmei when I'm 60. And I must engage in sexual relations with Dongmei at least 3 times a week." These promissory notes were jokingly referred to as sexual activity commitment letters. Zhang Guhua hired Chang Yuxing, who was in conflict with Dongmei, to teach her a lesson. When he appeared near Zhang's residence again, preparing to monitor his movements, 2 individuals suddenly rushed towards her car. These 2 individuals were the hired assailants arranged by Chang. According to forensic examination, although the woman's injuries constituted minor wounds, the man stabbed her 5 times on the right abdomen, 3 times on the left-hand fingers, once on the right elbow, and once on the forehead, totaling 10 stab wounds. In the end, Zhang and his accomplices were all sentenced to prison. Sharing type. Once Wang Trao Zhao was appointed as the deputy secretary of Anhui Province, His wife expressed her hope that he could assist in making some changes to her brother's position. Her younger brother is named Yang Feng, who was the former deputy secretary of the Xi'an City Committee and also holds an MBA degree. Due to his outstanding academic achievements, Yang Feng was highly favored by his family and received special care from his sister. Wang Zhao also helped him secure his current position. However, nobody could know that after his brother-in-law's assistance, Yang Feng not only failed to help his brother-in-law, but actually ended up sending Wang to prison, where he was even sentenced to death. Subsequently, Yang became increasingly greedy for money and indulged in sexual desires. Yang even used his MBA degree to manage and operate a team of mistresses, some specializing in the political arena and others running companies, effectively utilizing their talents to the fullest. Later on, he framed Wang Zhao, leading to a death penalty verdict. Surprisingly, they eventually exposed the shared mistress between intimate brothers Yang Feng, the deputy secretary of Xi'an City Committee, and Wang Zhao, the deputy secretary of Anhui Province Committee. In 2006, Yang Feng was sentenced to 10 years in prison for bribery. Li Wei had long blossomed into a beautiful woman, with a continuous stream of admirers around her. She was very interested in making money, especially engaged in relationships with high-ranking officials to amass wealth. However, in spite of her careful calculations, she overlooked the tax bureau aspect. In October 2006, Li Wei was apprehended by the police for tax evasion. Subsequently, the police found a diary at her residence which detailed Li Wei's romantic relationships with several high-ranking officials, including some at the provincial level. These high-ranking officials, the majority of whom were sentenced to life imprisonment or suspended death sentences, were involved in crimes such as corruption, bribery, and abuse of power. The relevant authorities, based on the diary's contents, began a comprehensive investigation, then discovered a shocking public mistresses chain. Among them were Du Shicheng, the former deputy secretary of the Shandong Provincial Party Committee and the secretary of the Qingdao Municipal Party Committee, who received a life sentence, and Chen Tongkai, the chairman of Sinopec, who was sentenced to death. In addition to improper relationships, Li Wei's diary clearly documented officials' corrupt behavior and how Li Wei herself made a staggering 200 million yuan in just 45 days. Salacity type. Chang Erjiang, the former secretary of the Municipal Party Committee in Tianmen City, Hubei Province, was not practical and shamelessly abused his authority for personal gain. Chang appeared to be upright and even discussed the importance of officials being honest and not corrupt at meetings. And he even recommended a book about virtuous officials, hoping that everyone would take it as an example. However, what was even more shocking was his personal lifestyle, which was chaotic and decadent. The secretary of the Hubei Provincial Party Committee referred to him as the 5 vices secretaries: drug, selling, warring, gambling, and corrupting. His scandal from years ago involved him having affairs with 107 women, earning him the nickname 108th General. Even more than 2 decades later, this scandal is still being talked about as a rumor. It is reported that over the course of 12 years, he had relationships with 107 women, and among them, many were government officials who were willing to sacrifice their integrity for career advancement by associating with Chang Erjiang. Some of their husbands also received opportunities for promotions. Ultimately, due to falsifying achievements, manipulating numerous women, and engaging in corruption, Chang Erjiang was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Helpless type. Li Songtao, the corrupt director of Chongqing Third Hospital, carried condoms with him and engaged in promiscuous activities with others when the need arose. Under Li Songtao's leadership, Chongqing Third Hospital's revenue reached new heights, and the welfare of all the hospital staff doubled. If this continued, Director Liu Songtao could have turned Chongqing Third Hospital into the most famous hospital in Chongqing. However, after achieving a series of successes, Liu Songtao relaxed his standards for himself, and his thoughts began to corrupt. He set his sights on the nurses within the hospital. Liu also had a peculiar habit: sleeping with nurses and writing it down in a diary. When investigators obtained his diary, They were shocked that the diary documented Liu Songtao's extravagant lifestyle and the sale of nurses, with records of more than 20 different women. If you calculate it based on a month of 30 days, Liu Songtao needed more than 20 days just to manage these relationships. With that, he had little time or energy left for work. During the trial in 2008, the court announced Liu Songtao's verdict, sentencing him to 12 years in prison. They also confiscated 1 million yuan of his property and initiated the retrieval of 1,311,950 CNY related to his corruption and bribery. Liu even left behind a shocking statement. Many women like themselves, and I can't help it, which seemed to reflect his helplessness. Collection type. At the workplace, Li Qingpu, the former deputy director of the Hainan Provincial Textile Industry Bureau, was a leader who was extremely strict with his subordinates. However, in private, he was not a decent person. Despite turning 50 years old, Li had a strong liking for young and beautiful girls. Known for his unconventional collection, there are records of it in 4 metal cabinets with password locks in his storage room. When the notebooks in those cabinets were finally opened, the staff found detailed descriptions of Li Qingpu's womanizing adventures inside. These descriptions were extremely explicit, including precise times, expenses, and so on. Additionally, some of the notebooks contained CD, but in each one, there was also a strange paper package containing women's hair. Li Qingpu actually recorded his womanizing experiences in a shocking 95 notebooks, with each notebook containing different women's names and collecting hair samples from a total of 236 women. Not only did he embezzle 269,000 CNY of public funds, but after his arrest, there was an additional unexplained 920,000 CNY in his account. In the end, Li Qingpu was sentenced to 20 years in prison for corruption, soliciting minors for prostitution, having a massive unexplained source of wealth, and all the funds he used for his illicit activities were confiscated. Creativity type. Lin Long, the former county party secretary of Xi'an County in Fujian Province, had maintained long-term sexual relationships with 22 women. To facilitate this, he used a unique and creative way that he created a red address book specifically for them, documenting their contact information, and proudly named them the Kunfang for Myriad Beauties. On May 22, 2002, he hosted a Kunfang feast at a hotel in Fuzhou, where 22 beautifully dressed and charming women met each other in private rooms. During the banquet, Lin Long even made an announcement. He declared that there would be a Kunfang feast held every year, and he established the annual beauty award to reward the woman who pleased him the most that year, earning enthusiastic applause from his mistresses. Unknown type. Corruption within China's political landscape has persistently plagued the nation, with a plethora of well-documented cases and potentially countless others yet to be unearthed. One particularly disconcerting facet of these scandals is the intertwining of extramarital relationships with corrupt practices. In such instances, officials not only exploit their positions for financial gain, but also engage in depraved morality and reprehensible liaisons. These extramarital entanglements not only underscore the moral degradation of these officials, but also serve as a stark testament to the inhumane and barbaric actions they are willing to undertake. The manipulation and mistreatment of extramarital partners, at times involving coercion and violence, vividly illustrate the depths to which these individuals are prepared to sink in pursuit of their personal desires. To sum it up, official corruption remains as an issue that always existed from ancient times to the present in China, marked by numerous documented cases and the likelihood of many more hidden beneath the surface. The repercussions of such corruption transcend the individuals involved, casting a dark shadow over society as a whole, corroding trust and undermining the collective well-being.